The Honorable the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, Mr. David Lee, MP, member for Pointe-a-Pierre, has asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions, papers.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay the following papers. The audited financial statements of Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Business Development Limited for the financial year ending December 31st, 2017. The audited financial statements of the Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program Limited for the financial years ended September 30th, 2015 to 2017. I beg to move that papers 1 to 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that papers 1 to 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Minister of Public Administration.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honour to lay the following papers. The annual report of the Public Service Commission for the year 2017, the Telecommunications Universal Service Amendment Regulations 2019. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Committees.
Member for Faisabad.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the 15th report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on an examination of the expenditure and internal controls of the Ministry of Tourism.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to present the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the 4th session, 2018-2019, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2018.
Prime Minister's questions.
Member for Barataria Sanwa.
Would the Prime Minister state whether the government will be amenable to changing the Magdalena Grand Hotel to a time-sharing or a rehabilitation hotel, or even a hotel with a similar plan as Sandals?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, in picking up my papers on the desk on the way down here, I inadvertently picked up the wrong papers. And therefore, I ask that if we can just go on to urgent questions with the leave of the House, and I'll answer these Prime Minister's questions after urgent questions.
Honourable members, that's the wish of the House?
Aye.
Yes. Okay, so, Clerk.
Urgent questions.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Education, given that students of the Carrickfergus West High School have been asked to stay away from school at this time, could the Minister state when will the proposed refurbishment works to the school take place?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, based on the information that is available to me, the Carrickfergus West High School is not closed, and therefore the students have not been asked to stay away from school. Students of forms 1 to 3 attend the school on a rotation basis. Students of form 4 and 5 are accommodated on a daily basis, every day. An OSH improvement notice for the prefabricated building that forms part of the school was received by the Ministry of Education in October 2018. The Ministry of Education is working on the necessary repairs which should be completed by the end of February. I repeat, students have not been asked to stay away from school. Thank you.
Supplemental, member for Shogunas East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, could you just give us some more details with respect to the rotation of these forms? What days and what times? Yes. And I'll have another question with your permission.
Minister of Education. Member for Cuba South, please. It's too early. Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, let me repeat the information which I just disclosed to this Honourable House, and that is the students of forms 1 to 3 attend the school on a rotation basis. That is, some students would attend for 3 days a week, while others would attend for 2 days a week. And then the other week, it will be reversed. And this is so that we can accommodate all our students. Madam Speaker, may I add that this school was a former junior secondary school. And when this school was shifted, as were many other junior secondary schools, it was necessary to construct some buildings to accommodate students who would now move on to forms 4 and 5. As a result, in this particular school, a prefabricated building was constructed. That building, through the passage of time, has suffered some cause for repairs, and those repairs are now being put in place. So this is the reason why we have had to resort to this method. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, could you indicate to us, or could you tell us, how are you going to be making up for the lost teaching and learning time with these students in our shifts?
Minister of Education. Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, you know, it is refreshing that the Minister for Shogunas East, the member for Shogunas East should ask that question, he being a teacher himself. And as all good teachers would know, we do everything possible to make up for lost time. All teachers do.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister indicate when will work begin on the collapsed portion of the Randy Carter Road, which is causing great inconvenience to motorists and pedestrians?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the information submitted to me by the Director of Highways is that the Randy Carter Road does not fall under the purview of the Ministry of Works. However, I have directed the Director to investigate and offer technical assistance to the responding agencies in the shortest possible time. Thank you.
Member for Urpuch East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Works and Transport, could the Minister indicate the circumstances surrounding an accident involving the Galleons Passage at the Tobago Pier on Wednesday, January 16, 2019?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, during mooring operations of the MV Galleon Passage on the 16th of January 2019, an O-ring in the bow thruster failed. This resulted in the ship's starboard corner touching the pier, causing a scratch on the vessel of 20 centimeters. And Madam Speaker, I'm not allowed to show what 20 centimeters is, but it's a scratch on the bow about this size. The rail edge of the pier was also suffered damage. The O-ring was subsequently replaced, and the vessel continued its return service that evening. The MV Galleon passage continues to be operating, and there's no risk to the traveling public. I thank you.
Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Thank you so much for the clarification, Minister. Minister, could you indicate to us the approximate cost to repair both the scratch and the pier?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the cost, the O-ring is a seal that was blown. A seal is something that they carry as spare parts because this is an item with warranty. So there was no cost to replace the seal, and the pier, it is estimated, the Port Authority may have to spend about $10,000 TT to repair. No, that is on the pier. The 20 centimeters is on the vessel. It's a scratch on the paint. Thank you.
Much less than the two prior.
Supplemental member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Taking into consideration that the minister just indicated that an additional $10,000 was incurred, could the minister give this House the cumulative cost since the Galleon's passage has been acquired on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago in terms?
I would not allow that as a supplemental question, out of order.
Prime Minister's questions.
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Prime Minister, would the Prime Minister state whether the government will be amenable to changing the Magdalena Grand Hotel to a time-sharing or rehabilitation hotel, or even a hotel with a similar plan as Sandals?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the process to select a long-term operator for the Magdalena Grand Hotel is advancing. It is premature at this stage to determine what the terms and conditions would be. The process has to be allowed to continue, and this is a matter being pursued by a cabinet-appointed steering committee under the purview of the Ministry of Finance.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 2 to the Honourable Prime Minister. Could the Prime Minister indicate whether there was a cost involved in the production and airing of his two-part program entitled Mind Your Business? And if so, will he disclose this cost?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, with respect to the airing of that informative program, which has found widespread public acclaim and acceptance, there's no cost to the state because the government has used its facility under the license management that exists with the broadcasting agencies. With respect to the production, Madam Speaker, all the costs are not in, but as soon as they're in, if the appropriate question is filed, it can be made available. But I just want to advise members on the other side that in this life, there's nothing that is free. The cost exists. And I can guarantee you, Madam Speaker, and the national community at large, that the cost of that production is minuscule as compared to what they were paying for communication before.
Supplemental member for Oropouche East.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Would the Prime Minister indicate, just for the public record, that being a recorded two-part series, when exactly was the program or were the programs recorded, where and to what audience?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the program was recorded in Trinidad and Tobago at Napa a couple of days before it was broadcast, and it was aired to a public audience.
Supplemental member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the Honourable Prime Minister be kind enough to indicate whether or not the production of the two-part series was contracted out to a private entity?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the answer is yes. I mean, some production house that does that kind of business would have been engaged by the Ministry, by the Prime Minister's office, and that is why we have a cost to pay.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
Prime Minister, you said the sum was minuscule. Can you indicate what is minuscule?
If you compare a flea with an elephant, the flea is minuscule in size. The flea is minuscule in size and the elephant is large.
Member for Princestown, supplemental.
Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Prime Minister, can the Honourable Prime Minister indicate whether or not the Darrell Duku network was involved in this production?
Prime Minister.
I'm not aware of any production by any production house called Darrell Duku Network.
Member for Faizabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 3. Could the Prime Minister indicate when he expects the Cuba Hospital to be available for use by citizens of Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Speaker, as I've indicated before in this House, there's an initiative with respect to the export of healthcare using this facility. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Health and the University of the West Indies, are engaged in putting that in place. It's taking a little while longer than we had anticipated, but we have been advised by the University of the West Indies that they are moving as fast as they're able to. However, Madam Speaker, a special purpose company was established in mid-2018, and consideration is being given to engaging an operator for phased operationalization of the hospital later in the year. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Faizabad.
Thank you for that answer, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, can you indicate whether any provisions for the engagement of local healthcare workers are part of the operational arrangements for this hospital?
Prime Minister.
I couldn't give you the exact details now numerically or otherwise, but certainly it will be an opportunity for healthcare providers of the highest quality and in numbers to be available in that hospital to provide healthcare for the national population, but with a focus on exporting healthcare services.
Supplemental member for Caroni East.
Prime Minister, would you be kind enough to indicate what you may consider, from your governance perspective, the phased introduction for use at the hospital, which you were discussing with the university?
Madam Speaker, I would not engage in guesswork at this stage, but I would rather wait until the final arrangements are worked out by those who are charged with the responsibility. And I'm sure with a little bit of patience, all those details become available. Because, Madam Speaker, it is a novel initiative being done for the first time. And the participants are being very careful to ensure that the work is done properly, and that when it is made available to the public as a position to be advanced, that it is accurate and workable.
Supplemental member for Faizabad.
So can you give any assurance that Trinidad and Tobago citizens will not have to pay for services at this hospital?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, this hospital is meant to be a fee-earning entity, and that's why we're talking about exporting healthcare services. However, as I said at the very beginning, charges applicable to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will be borne by the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the same way that we are carrying charges in other hospitals.
Supplemental member for Barakarisano. Supplemental member for Caroni Central.
A role was announced for the University of the West Indies in this matter. Can you clarify what that role might be, or do you know at this point?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as I said before, this approach is dealing with a number of issues, and I was very clear in this House as to outline what it was. It started with a requirement for the government of Trinidad and Tobago to discharge its responsibility to the University of the West Indies, where there was a claim of over $200 million owing to the university. The university was in the position where, had those monies not been paid and paid promptly, that the university accounts would have been in danger of being qualified. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, requiring to discharge that responsibility in our current financial situation, agreed to use the asset-based arrangement, using an asset that we had in hand to discharge that payment. And therefore, the University of the West Indies accepted that it be paid by an involvement of this asset, an asset transfer. Having agreed to do that, we went further to set up the arrangement I just mentioned, where the University of the West Indies and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Health, will operate a hospital for profit, providing additional training and services to the local and the international community. And that is what is being worked out, and that's why it's being delayed a little bit like that. So, Madam Speaker, that is as far as I can go now. We do not have the final arrangements because that is being worked out. And as soon as those final arrangements are available, Madam Speaker, as the government always does, it will make it available to the population.
Question number 4.
Yes, Prime Minister. Could the Prime Minister inform the House whether the relationship with any of the existing rating agencies has been severed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I don't know where that question is coming from, but I will say, Madam Speaker, that the government currently has contractual arrangements known to all and sundry with 4 credit rating agencies. 1, Moody's Investors Services. 2, Standard & Poor's Global Ratings. 3, Fitch Ratings. And 4, CARICRIS, the Caribbean Rating Agencies. And if there's any question to be asked, Madam Speaker, about this issue of credit rating, the question really should be whether the government has added another credit agency, rating agency, because that's what we've done. Rather than sever any agency, we've added an extra one. So Fitch is now overlooking our rating considerations.
Member for Oropouche West.
Mr. Speaker, could the Prime Minister inform the House? As it relates to a meeting, as it relates to a meeting between the Prime Minister, CIC Capital Corporation, and China Zenma Oil Company, can the Prime Minister enlighten the House as to the nature of this meeting?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, CIC China Investment Corporation is the owner of 10% of Train 1 at Atlantic LNG. The other shareholders are BP, Shell, and the National Gas Company. The meeting with CIC paying a courtesy call on the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is just that, to discuss and inform on matters of a shareholder interest, where these shareholders are engaged in sensitive negotiations at this time, Madam Speaker. And this is a matter between the shareholders, and a meeting in the office of the Prime Minister is a courtesy to inform us as to where these discussions are, what the company's position is, and as such, the Prime Minister will keep those confidences.
Member for Caroni East. Member for Oropouche West, question 6.
With regard to a recent meeting between the Prime Minister and executives from the Sunwing Travel Group, can the Prime Minister inform the House if it is the government's intention to sell Magdalena Grand Beach Resort and golf course to Sunwing Travel Group?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, once again, I don't know where this question is coming from. The government cannot sell what it doesn't own. As far as I'm aware, the golf course in Tobago at Magdalena is not owned by the state agency. And Madam Speaker, with respect to the visit to the Prime Minister's office by Sunwing, it is again, once again, the government's encouragement to foreign investors and support for investors in the business of Tobago. And the government has, at this stage, no discussion with Sunwing or anybody else for the sale of the Magdalena Hotel. What we have, Madam Speaker, is an open door to Sunwing and to any other well-known international brand that might lift Tobago's tourism plant. Some we pay to look for, others come through on their own, but the door is open as we search and continue to search for an international brand for the Magdalena Grand Hotel.
Member for Karen East.
Could the Prime Minister state why the government has not, or has to date, not hired more nurses and doctors for the public health care system?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the hiring of nurses and doctors for the public healthcare system is not an open-ended process, as you would know, Madam Speaker, and as the member who asked the question would also know. Being a practitioner in it, there's an establishment in the healthcare system, and there's an appropriation authorized by this Parliament to pay doctors and nurses, and within that appropriation, which is a fixed sum of money, the normal hiring processes are at work. However, Madam Speaker, those who operate the system would know, and as we are now on the verge of taking delivery of 2 or possibly 3 new facilities, because we have Point Fortin, we have Arima, and we have the details of Hoover to come, there is a need for this Parliament to expand the provision for the recurrent, for doctors and nurses, and that will be addressed by the appropriations authorities as we go forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Prime Minister, could you tell the nurses and doctors hundreds of them who are waiting jobs and are unable to get jobs, what advice would you give to them and tell them to help them and comfort them while they await their jobs and there are no jobs available for them?
Madam Speaker, what I will say to such persons is that opportunities will continue to become available in the public health system, and we will fill those and use those as the appropriation allow. But Madam Speaker, there's also the possibility that these specialists, especially doctors, who are qualified in Trinidad and Tobago, it may be that the time has come that some of these doctors, qualified to do so under law, may not only look to the public health sector for their career. Doctors can work outside the public health sector until they do get an opening, if they so desire to look for one in the public health sector. It is quite wrong to assume that if a doctor is not holding a job in the public health sector, that there is no opportunity for him to practice or her to practice as a doctor. Because my understanding is, once you're certified by the competent authority, a doctor can practice within those certifications anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental, member for Karen East.
Honourable Prime Minister, as you are quite aware, having been associated many years through with colleagues in the health sector, when these young doctors come out, if you unleash them into the general population, are you not considering that the population will be shortchanged as a result of an intern coming out and just going into general practice without getting hospital experience?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, nobody is talking about unleashing anything. These are people who are certified by a competent authority, and I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that my colleague knows what I'm talking about, which is practicing within the level of their competence. They certainly won't be able to practice as specialists. But, Madam Speaker, there are large areas of this country which are unserved and would be happy for a young graduate to come there and do even volunteer work, Madam Speaker, especially when many of these graduates have been supported by the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. Also, Madam Speaker, in recent years, we have developed a significant component of private sector healthcare delivery, where some of these persons can practice. But one's career does not start at the top in every instance. So all I am saying, Madam Speaker, is insofar as the public health sector is absorbing as many as possible within the allocation that the Parliament has approved, let us not close the door to doing something different, especially from young people who want to serve the rest of the national community until their perfect job has arrived.
Sir, could you consider 2 things? One, a lot of these doctors are not fully registered and they are temporarily registered and they will need to change the registration status. Would you consider that, one? And two,
what question?
And two, the question is, would you consider a differential salary for these doctors so they could operate in the public health sector
All right,
also?
I allow that. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if we are disposed to doing things differently to get a different result, then all the requisite changes and recommendations ought to be considered, can and should be considered. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Supplementary member for Faisal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, with regards to your suggestion that perhaps some of these doctors can serve in a voluntary status, there are legal implications with regards to medical coverage. Will you consider providing or looking at providing the framework for that kind of arrangement in the public health facilities?
Madam Speaker, I don't want to be misunderstood because I know what the headline is going to be. And the headline is that I'm asking doctors to work for free. I'm not saying that. My colleague from Barataris will speak about the registration. Madam Speaker, these are all components of a solution to a problem that exists. And all that I'm saying is that these are the things that we should be looking at to ensure that the people that we train don't just sit there and be frustrated and unregistered while doing things differently, can bring them on board in a different place, in a different way, within their competencies, and we will have a more perfect, or I shouldn't say more perfect, a more effective healthcare delivery system. That's all I'm saying.
Member for Caroni Central.
Could the Prime Minister confirm whether between September and December 2015, the Minister of Finance made 6 requests for dividend payments from the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, between 15 and 16, the Minister of Finance made 1 request for dividends to be paid in increments between September and December. These included $1.5 billion for the special dividend from the IPO from the TTNGL. And in order, given the financial status of the NGC, this request to have the dividend paid in increments was an understanding of, was a response to its circumstances. And that there was a total of $2.1 billion in ordinary dividends, interim dividends, and these dividends were budgeted for, debated, and passed in the budget of 2016.
Supplemental, member for Caroni Central.
Yes. Were there further dividends received in 2016?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the member asked a question about 2015. I came prepared to answer about 2015, and the member ought not now to extend it to the 2016 and try to ambush me.
I appreciate, Madam Speaker.
Member for Naparimo.
Thank you. Chair. Question number 90, Prime Minister. Could the Prime Minister indicate what debt to GDP ratio threshold his government has set for the management of our economy, and any measures he intends to adopt to not exceed the identified ceiling?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as the wheel spins, I direct my friend to the business of this House, where he was a part in 2019, to page 8 of the medium-term outlook. And with your approval, Madam Speaker, I would like to quote 1 paragraph for the benefit of my member, of my colleague, who has a document provided to him by this House. And it reads as follows: the public sector debt will remain sustainable over the projected period 2018 to 2021, and within the acceptable international benchmark of between 65 to 70% of GDP. An increasing use of non-debt creating financing options will ensure that the public sector debt remains sustainable. Madam Speaker, that paragraph is in this document, which the member has a copy of, and I don't know why he's taking the Parliament time asking me to read for him when he can read.
Supplemental, member for Naparimo.
Prime Minister, answer the question, please, in the second part. What measures he intends to adopt to not exceed the identified ceiling?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, when one cannot read is a problem. When one cannot read and cannot understand is a bigger problem. Madam Speaker, that question is answered in the second part of that paragraph, which says, an increasing use of non-debt creating financing, those options will ensure that the public sector debt remains sustainable. Madam Speaker, this is the answer to an urgent question, the answer being published in this House since October last.
Supplementary, member for Naparimo.
Indicate 3 examples of non-debt financing that you spoke about.
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, If the member wants to get on like that, I will direct him to the Minister of Finance and file the question in an appropriate way.
Member for Naparima.
Question 10. Could the Prime Minister give reasons why, at this critical juncture in our diplomatic relations with Venezuela, our country has no ambassador resident in that jurisdiction?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as part of the ongoing arrangements of managing our affairs at the Ministry of Finance, in the search for a director, inspector of missions, it was deemed that the ambassador who at that time was located in Venezuela was the best person for the job, and the government has recalled him and has assigned him to that position of inspector of missions. That being so, Madam Speaker, a vacancy has occurred there. In the interim, all our business with Guyana have been handled with Venezuela. No, I'm mixing them up. No, Madam Speaker. All our business, Madam Speaker, relating to that country was being handled out of headquarters as we go through the process of seeking agreement to appoint a new ambassador to that country.
Given the number of changes in diplomatic postings, this being one, why it is that it could not be a seamless transition where one would have left and an appointment made?
Prime Minister.
Why is it?
Madam Speaker, I'm not sure what equation the member is using to come to that conclusion, but as I said, the movement of staff, promoting, retiring, filling vacancies, seeking agreement, these are all ongoing business of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the country of Trinidad and Tobago, and I do not know what the member is getting at in implying that one could turn a wheel here and end up in a direction over there.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given the withdrawal by, given the collapse of the Sandals Tobago project, could the Prime Minister inform this House of what alternative projects will be pursued by the government to boost tourism in Tobago?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, contrary to what has been said that we were entirely standing on and depending on Sandals for our initiative in Tobago, we are prepared to act, and we are engaged in talking to any acceptable entity that is interested in identifying Tobago as a location of interest. And Madam Speaker, with respect to the existing plans that are in Tobago, the government recently doubled the incentives under the Tourism Accommodation Upgrade Program, which provides rebates for accommodation providers for small as well as larger facilities from 1 to 5 rooms and from 6 to 150 rooms, increasing the rebates from 20 to 40% for the first category and from 25 to 50% for the second category. The government has also increased the government loan guarantee program for tourism-related business in Tobago. The subsidy increased from 2 to 5% on approved new and restructured tourism-related loans. The length of the repayment has been increased from 7 years to 15 years. Further, the government has appointed a steering committee for the selection of an operator for the Magdalena Grand and Golf Resort and is currently evaluating the final proposals. The qualified proposals are currently being considered. It is noted that there may be need to undertake enhancement to the facility, such as a breakwater, beach enhancement, and a refurbishment of the hotel plant. And Madam Speaker, as we continue to advance Tobago as a potential jewel in the Caribbean, all investors who are interested in investing their money in a great place will continue to consider Tobago and meet a government with a door wide open to encourage them to select Tobago as their location of choice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister assure this House, given whatever agreements that are realized going forward in relation to boosting tourism in Tobago, those agreements will be laid in the House of Representatives in relation to transparency and accountability?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as is necessary and as we have done as a government, at the appropriate time, all appropriate documentation which are required to be laid in this House will be laid in this House.
Supplementary member for Baratarisano.
Prime Minister, could you indicate which, if it's THA or the Cabinet, which one is responsible for approving an offshore medical school in Tobago?
I really would not allow that as a supplemental question.
It's a project.
Based on what is happening. The project is to boost tourism.
But that is...
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Prime Minister, given the withdrawal by Sandals Resort from the government's intended Sandals Tobago project, could the Prime Minister state whether there was a cost to the state and would he disclose this cost?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as has been said publicly before, there is no cost consequent upon the withdrawal. Sandals has borne its cost of whatever they were engaged in, and of course whatever the government has engaged in, for example like the survey of the parcel of land that was under consideration, the topographic survey and any other, including the acquisition of the parcel of land, that remains an asset of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore there is no cost that can be attributed to the withdrawal as a consequence of the withdrawal.
Honourable members, question. Prime Minister, questions. Time is now spent.
Questions on notice. Questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 18 oral questions. We will be answering 13 questions. We are asking for a deferral of the following. Question number 33, question number 46, number 53, number 54, and number 55. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 56 to the Honourable Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs and the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago provide assistance aimed at assisting structured entities and individuals engaged in sport development activities. Gymnastics is one of the sporting disciplines under the purview of the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Madam Speaker, it should be noted that financial assistance is provided by Sport TT to national governing bodies to meet costs associated with the following areas. 1, administration. 2, development. 3, high performance. Costs arising from litigation as a result of a tort or breach of contract on the part of a national governing body are not covered by the government. Accordingly, no funds have been committed to pay the sum awarded by the court in the matter involving Ms. Thema Williams and the Trinidad and Tobago Gymnastics Federation, as this does not fall under the established categories of financial assistance. This is a private matter between the Federation and Ms. Williams, and the government cannot be expected to accept liability for any unjust or unfair action on the part of the Federation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, can the Honourable Minister confirm whether the attorneys of Ms. Thema Williams have communicated with the Ministry with respect to this particular issue?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No, Madam Speaker.
Speaker, before we proceed, could I just make an adjustment to what I announced? I'd like to indicate that we will be also answering questions 53, 54, and 55. So the only ones I'm asking for deferral are of 33 and 46. Thank you very kindly.
Member for Couva North, question 53.
Question number 53 to the Minister of Tourism.
Minister of Tourism.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, no money is owed to Sandals International for drawing and designs.
Supplemental, member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, the claims made by Mr. Butch Stewart that the Trinidad and Tobago government owe him a lot of money for designs. Can you explain that, please?
Minister of Tourism.
Madam Speaker, on Tuesday, the CEO indicated that no money was owed for any drawings or designs.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 54 to the Minister of Tourism.
Madam Speaker, these matters do not arise as the project is no longer proceeding.
Okay.
Member for Couva North, would you also, are you going to
Sure.
still ask this question or you will vacate this question?
I will go on to question 55.
In terms of question 55 also?
No, I will go ahead to ask
Question 55,
it. Yeah.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 55 to the Minister of Tourism.
Madam Speaker, there was no invitation for expressions of interest relative to the construction of Sandals hotels. Therefore, there is no list of construction companies proposing to construct a hotel.
Supplemental? Supplemental, member for Pooch East.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister, could you indicate whether or not any type of infrastructural or development work have commenced at the site earmarked for the Sandals Resort project?
I will now allow that as a supplemental question.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 57 to the Honourable Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management has developed over the years a number of plans aimed at disaster and mitigation readiness, including the National Earthquake Plan. These plans are routinely reviewed by the ODPM to ensure compliance with international practices. The National Earthquake Plan was reviewed immediately following the earthquake of August 21st, 2018. The ODPM is currently engaged in a comprehensive review of the nation's risk management and has had specific plans, which became critical following the August 21st, 2018 earthquake, as well as in the aftermath of flooding incidents which occurred across various parts of Trinidad. It is anticipated that following this review, the plans will be modified in keeping with international best practices. Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, to the Honourable Minister, could the Honourable Minister indicate on what day did Cabinet approve these recommendations with respect to this updated plan?
Minister of National Security.
I think I mentioned in my answer to you, I said the plans are being reviewed. It's an ongoing process.
So therefore,
post earthquake of August 21st, 2018. You have to understand that earthquake, especially earthquake disaster plans, are constantly being reviewed because of the situation that we're dealing with in terms of earthquake. Almost every year, incident, you have to review your plans according to what's happening in the environment.
Supplemental, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, is to the Honourable Minister, is the Honourable Minister saying that since these recommendations were made, 6 months has passed and there has still been no approval from the Cabinet with respect to the National Disaster Plan as it relates to earthquakes?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, the plans are being reviewed at this point in time.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 58 to the Honourable Attorney General.
Attorney General.
I was multitasking. Would you just repeat the question number, please?
Question number 58, AG.
Thank you. I sincerely apologize. I thank the honourable member. Madam Speaker, the bill, I'm very pleased to announce, has been finalized. It's gone to Cabinet. We are expecting that we will be able to lay that very shortly.
Supplemental, member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Attorney General, in light of the answer that you provided, where the bill will be laid shortly, hopefully within this term of the Parliament, could you indicate whether or not there is ongoing infrastructural plans to operationalize the legislation, or are we going to wait until the legislation is passed and then look to enforce in terms of infrastructure?
Attorney General.
Thank the honourable member for the question. Yes, as a matter of fact, we're doing the operationalization as we speak. Many people don't really know that in the year 2000, the Sexual Offences Act was amended to include the requirement for a register. The TTPS was meant to have kept that register alive. That, unfortunately, has not been managed in the best manner possible. And what we're attempting to do is to rationalize that process, incorporate all of the material that ought to have gone on to that register, and treat with it within a new way. So we are firmly intent upon operationalizing the law with immediacy.
Supplemental member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Attorney General, AG, in light of what you've just said, could you give us an indication with respect to the infrastructure and the development of operationalizing the legislation? How is this being administered in terms of the different ambits of the state, TTPS and other stakeholders being involved?
Sure. I thank the honourable member. There would be three essential arms of involvement. One is the prison service. Secondly, of course, is the judiciary. And thirdly, is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Those three arms articulate together. A, with persons who have been convicted and have served time, and upon release have to undergo the registering process and then the reporting requirements as a registered sex offender. Secondly, the judiciary in providing notice for matters which are historical, and also the interrelationship between the prisons and the judiciary records. And thirdly, the TTPS in terms of a monitoring factor. There's a fourth limb associated to it, which is the Immigration Division, in a very novel provision which we intend to have in relation to children, so that we have a protection of the widest form possible.
Supplemental member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam. Madam, finally, to the Honourable Attorney General. AG, can you confirm that there's a coordinating committee headed by the AG's office with respect to this in terms of the stakeholders?
Yes, most definitely. As we have done with all of the legislation that we do, we establish a desk for each bill. And that is usually a combined effort where we actually bring the stakeholders on the table to draft with us. So we have had the participation of all arms of it. In particular, my colleague, the Honourable Member for Tobago East, and the Office of the Prime Minister in her extreme and strong advocacy as it relates to children. So we have a full coordinating mechanism at the Attorney General's office.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 26 to the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a draft bill which seeks to treat with the asylum by foreign nationals has been prepared. We are about to go into stakeholder consultation on it. Of course, this is a very complex matter which has serious implications for our national budget and national security itself, as the availability of government services and resources in Trinidad and Tobago for non-nationals must be carefully factored and measured.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
Honourable AG, do you have any requests, like how many requests you have at now, or the second question I'll ask after? The number of requests you have for asylum seekers, the number.
Attorney General.
So, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General's office has nothing to do with asylum seeking requests. That is funneled to the UNHCR committee. That is one of the very things that we've sought to obtain by way of clarification. The UNHCR receives requests, they manage that data and process. They do a process of investigation, and then when they certify someone in a category of refugee or asylum seeker, they then move those people out of the country. So we have requested the data as to the number of requests, but very importantly, the number of people that leave the jurisdiction. Because in fact, the outer world, which accepts refugees and asylum seekers, has moved down, as far as we understand it, from 80 people per year down to about 20 people per year. So the issue that has to be factored in Trinidad and Tobago is, how many people are you going to hold in our jurisdiction, non-nationals, accessing state resources with priority for education, housing, and medicine, in priority to your citizens, whilst you're moving 20 people out per year? So that's why it's an extremely complicated issue as to what the country, the national community, considers it is prepared to do in managing this. Put quite simply, if you have thousands of people entering your system, are we as a nation prepared operationally, societally, and financially to bear the cost whilst we wait for 20 or 40 people per year to possibly leave our jurisdiction.
Supplementary member for Shogunas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, to the Honorable Attorney General. Honorable Attorney General, are you aware that Trinidadian national Dylan Johnson has been granted asylum by the Home Office in the UK? And whether, with respect to that fact, do you think now it is necessary for the Prime Minister to trigger Section 137 of the Constitution?
Yes, I will allow that as a supplementary question. Member for Tabakit.
Honorable Attorney General, can you say how many persons are in Trinidad and Tobago now who have status as asylum seekers, and how many persons have status as refugee seekers? What's the number? What's the actual numbers?
Attorney General.
Regrettably, I don't have those numbers. What we're seeking to do in the stakeholder consultation is to ascertain that. So we complement, in particular, our relationship. The individuals we work with the UNHCR, they have been very forthcoming in providing us with information and data. And I wish to say publicly that we are in consultation with them to establish the numbers. Not only the existing numbers, but the anticipated numbers, because the UNHCR network involves management of migrant issues in countries around Trinidad and Tobago, South America, etc., so that they are able to give us a rate anticipation from donor countries to recipient countries.
Supplementary member for Tabakit.
Attorney General, I'm disappointed. I ask you, are you disappointed that you cannot tell the country how many people have come into this country as asylum seekers and seeking refugee status, when we hear openly that the St. Vincent de Paul Society, they receive people seeking refugee status or asylum status?
Member, it's a question and not a statement. Sure. Attorney General.
With the greatest of respect to my learned colleague for Tabakit, no, I'm not disappointed in myself. I'm disappointed the question wasn't asked, because I came prepared to answer a question. Had the question been put to me with a request for numerical figures, I would have, of course, done my very best to bring that information here. It would be irresponsible for the occupant of the Office of the Attorney General to just make it up as I go. So, I mean, I'm in the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago answering serious issues. The world is listening to this, and I don't think that off-the-cuff answers really give it the best thing. So if my learned colleague wishes to answer, to have a question answered, then he must put the question squarely, and I will be, of course, very happy and pleased to facilitate that.
Come on, man. It'd be ridiculous. Member for Oakwood West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 27 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, police officers conducted a total of 1,658 foot patrols and 10,399 mobile patrols for the period 1st of January to 30th November 2018 in the Penal Debe region. Plans already in place to increase police patrols in the Penal Debe region with the launch of the Emergency Response Unit, which includes roving stop and search patrol as well as physical stop and search patrols. During the period, January to November 2018, 666 arrests were made for serious crime in the Penal Debe region, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary member for Oakwood West.
Honourable Minister, you said plans are already in place. Do you have a date, a tentative date in which these things will take effect, the actual patrolling in Penal Debe?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, patrols are already occurring in those areas and across Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the member for Point of Peer, question number 31 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the first importation of fuel for commercial use commenced on October 27, 2018. The name of the supplier was BP International Sales and Trading. The quantity of fuel per the contract was 16 cargoes of 240,000 barrels each of refined products. that is gas oil or diesel, premium and super gasoline, and aviation fuel. The purchase prices of imported fuels vary, since they are based on the U.S. Gulf Coast reference price at the time of purchase, which are posted internationally on a daily basis. The actual purchase price also includes, in our case, the cost of insurance and freight to Trinidad and Tobago.
Supplemental, Member for Tabaki.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask the member, the question was, what was state the purchase price? Can the member please state the purchase price of the 16 cargoes?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Sorry, the member for Point of View wasn't here. The posted price, as I said, varies every day. And it is the price reference at the time of purchase, which is called the NOR, the Notice of Readiness to Ship the cargo. Gulf Coast prices, plus other adjustments, insurance, freight. It went out to tender who gave you the better insurance package, the freight package. The companies don't basically like you to say the X price because they may be charging cheaper than somewhere else. They are comfortable with quoting the formula in which the prices are based.
Supplemental, Member for Caroni East.
Honourable Minister, was there a procurement process used for the determination of the supplier?
Most definitely. An international tender was there for the traders who operate in the region, and BP, International Sales and Trading, won the tender.
Member for Point of View.
Question number 32 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy
Thank you once again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the first export of crude oil was October 30th, 2018. To date, 4 cargoes of 500,000 barrels each and 1 cargo of 360 barrels have been sold. 360,000 barrels. I just want to go on record to say that is the first time for over 5 decades that Trinidad and Tobago has been exporting its crude from land and the West Coast. The buyers were Trafigura, which is one of the world's leading traders, ExxonMobil, the world's largest oil company, Shell, the world's second largest oil company, and Trafigura, again, a trader, each of whom purchased a cargo of 500,000 barrels, and Petrojam, who purchased a cargo of 360,000 barrels. The selling price achieved so far for our local crude exceeded the posted price of WTI. And I just want to pause here, Madam Speaker, because all the naysayers, former UNC energy ministers, former current leader of the COP, who was a former energy minister, went on a charade and saying our crude has no value. You can't sell it, you'll have to dump it on the market. It's heavy crude, it's high sulfur crude. We got, and this is the first time we're testing the market, WTI, which is fairly high price. It's only second to Brent, plus $2, $3 as the case may be. Again, it should be noted that the price of crude oil on the world market varies on a daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis. The entities interested in Petrotrin crude oil are obviously the majors, international traders, and refiners. All have been invited to participate in the purchase of our crude. And this is one of the real positives that has come out of the restructuring. And it is a source of foreign exchange.
Supplemental, Member for Supplemental, Member for Caroni.
Honourable Minister, based on your statement just a while ago, it's the first time that you're exporting in 50 years. Would you not attribute this to the fact that previously all the oil that was produced was used in a local refinery? Yes, yeah. Would you answer that? Yes or no?
The answer is obviously yes, because if it wasn't exported and it was produced, it has to be used somewhere.
Supplemental, Member for Caroni.
So your glee and statement just...
Question, please, sir.
would you not agree that your glee is that you showed just a while ago is really short of the truth?
Point of order. I will not allow that question. Member for Tabakit, you have a question? Supplemental, Member for Tabakit.
Would the Honourable Minister be kind enough to say whether the cost of production, what's the difference between the cost of production and the selling price of these oils, and whether we are really making a profit on this?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Prior to the restructuring of Petrotrin, the cost of production was approximately $35 to $37 per barrel. WTI over that period had traded at 55 plus 65 in some cases earlier in the year. And we expect our restructured heritage to even drop that operating cost to closer to $30.
Member for Naparima.
I would like to, Madam Speaker, I'd like to withdraw the question, please.
That is question number 44.
44. Thank you.
Question number 44 is withdrawn. Question number 45, Member for Naparima.
Question number 45 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the total amount of money spent by the Ministry of National Security on the National Crime Prevention Program as of December 7, 2018 is $2,432,738. The breakdown of expenditure is as follows. Salaries, contracted services, $1,315,100.89. Remuneration to committee members, $69,500. NCPP launched in Trinidad, $377,585.40. NCPP launched in Tobago, $17,350. Public outreach, $234,092.43. Office supplies and equipment, $346,005. Office furniture, $32,713. Business travel, $25,061. Research materials, $5,936. Stakeholder consultation, $7,875. Recruitment, with respect to advertisement, etc., $1,518.75. Madam Speaker.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaker. Question number 51 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the waiting time for citizens to clear goods at the ports of entry is dependent on the service, on other service agencies, mainly the Customs and Excise Division. The division is the unit responsible for inspecting containers entering and leaving the port and decides whether a container should be open for inspection. As such, the port has no jurisdictions or control over delayed time for cargo. With respect to measures and waiting time for clearing goods at the port, there are three basic types of delivery. Delivery of containers not inspected by customs. This usually takes an average time of 55 minutes. However, based on the commodity being cleared, a container can be delivered in approximately 10 minutes. Delivery of container examination station. Any container which goes to the CES before delivery by the port can take between 2 and 7 days based on the inspection process at the CES and the nature of the cargo. And delivery of general cargo, personal effects. This can be lengthy as the process requires 100% examination by the Customs and Excise Division. I thank you.
Supplementary Member for Couva South.
Taking into consideration, Minister, that you indicated to this House that the port authorities under your control and Customs and Excise are a separate part, but in terms of easing goods and services out of the respective ports of entry, have you been able to collaborate with the Minister of Finance to inquire as to whether there's a full complement of custom officers at the respective ports?
Not will allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 52 to the Minister of Public Utilities.
Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam Speaker, arising out of the restructuring of the telecommunications services of Trinidad and Tobago, a total of 554 employees have been separated as at the 14th of December 2018, comprising of 503 unionized and 51 non-unionized employees.
Supplemental, Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, based on the data that you have just presented, does that mean going forward there will be no further job losses within the unionized and non-unionized bargaining units at TSTT?
Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam Speaker, based on the information that is before me, those are as at that date, the company has finished their restructuring exercise, and therefore they are not seeing any need for any further reductions going forward.
Supplemental, Member for Caroni East.
Honourable Minister, based on your almost completed restructuring exercise, what do you intend to do about the recent revelation of widespread and massive corruption in TSTT to the tune of over $500 million?
I'm not going to allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister inform this House whether the 554 employees have received their full separation packages from TSTT?
Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam Speaker, from the amount of money that is owed to these individuals, the due date for payment would be the end of this month, and I think things are on track to facilitate that due date.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 59 to the Honourable Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at this time, there is no definite completion date with respect to the National Policy Framework on Refugees. An approved framework involves an extensive multi-sectorial approach and accurately forecasts the social and economic cost to the state, as well as gives adequate consideration to the impact on society as a whole. To this end, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Finance, as well as local and international partners, are all involved in extensive consultation towards completing the policy. It should be noted that the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs leads the legislative agenda on this matter. Moreover, the time frame for the introduction of legislation to give effect to the policy is interrelated and interconnected to the multi-sectorial consultation taking place, Madam Speaker.
Supplemental, Member Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, in light of the answer that you provided, is it true to say that there is no urgency coming from the government in light of there's no expected completion date on the policy, far less for legislation? It's not being treated with any sense of urgency. Is it true to say that?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, it is not true to say that.
Madam, could the Honourable Minister say what actions have been taken to reflect that it is not true?
Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, I thought I answered that with respect to the approach that is being taken to treat the refugee policy.
Supplemental, Member for Princestown.
Madam Speaker, could the Honourable Minister say what specific measures, in light of his answer that there is no completion date, far less for a date for when legislation will be brought to the Parliament, what specific measures are being put in place to deal with the issue of the policy framework on refugees?
Minister of National
Madam
Security.
Speaker, I'll repeat my answer. An approved framework involves an extensive multi-sectorial approach and accurately forecast the social and economic costs. So therefore, Madam Speaker, it takes time and this is in progress.
Supplemental, Member for Princestown.
Madam Speaker, the question to the Honourable Minister, therefore, is it true to say that there is no urgency coming from this government as demonstrated by your actions with respect to refugees?
That question has been asked and answered. Question number 60, Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, question number 60 to the Honourable Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Office of the Attorney General has not received any formal communication from any international organization on Trinidad and Tobago's position on this matter. The Republic of Trinidad and Tobago operates on a dualistic system as opposed to a monistic system of law. That unequivocally means that the mechanism by which we make law is that we have to introduce domestic law. And as it relates to international treaties, you can only approach the domestic law position after you have ratified the treaty. And Trinidad and Tobago has not ratified any treaty in this regard. Trinidad and Tobago, as the Honourable Member would be aware, because we've addressed this several times in the Parliament before, has acceded only to 2 international treaties. The first is the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees, and the second is the 1967 Protocol to the 1951 Convention. We have not ratified these treaties. We are therefore not in a position, neither the last government nor this government, to proceed to bring in domestic legislation by the incorporation of international treaties until ratification happens.
And they didn't ratify.
Supplementary member for Princess Town.
To the Honourable Attorney General, again, similar to what I asked the Minister of National Security. In light of the answer that you provided, what measures have been adopted to deal with this as a matter of urgency with respect to the ratification of these treaties and agreements?
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, in answer to a previous question today posed by the honourable members opposite, I informed that the data has to be captured for us to understand the situation. This is directly sitting upon the people of Trinidad and Tobago and the taxpayers to accede to this treaty and then move to ratification and then bring in this law with the alacrity that the honourable member for the first time demonstrates on the UNC's part. Because mind you, in the 5 years and 3 months that they had, they did nothing to ratify. But the alacrity being offered right now has to be on the back of understanding how many people are to come into the system, how long they will stay here, and then how many will go out. In answer to an earlier question, I informed that the anecdotal information is that roughly about 20 to 40 people maximum per year will have the opportunity to be relocated as asylum seekers or refugees into other recipient countries. Countries like the United States of America, which was a large receiver of this class of people, have now limited their numbers down. In the meanwhile, the people of Trinidad and Tobago will have to offer priority housing, priority education, priority medical treatment to refugee and asylum seekers. And that is something which we consider to be a very important thing as a matter of comity. Currently, the standing protocols by the respective agencies for education, health, etc. accommodate the requests, Madam Speaker. But the question of the country being ready is also rooted in whether we can afford it right now. And that is a significant issue when we have 173,000 people on the housing list who are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago right now. So the question, Madam Speaker, is when the question will be answered when the stakeholder consultation is over. In the meanwhile, our standing protocols are managing the situation, and we are in a close relationship with the UNHCR and other agencies to make sure that this situation is managed appropriately.
Honourable Member Princess Tong, I know sometimes your passion for certain topics, get the better of you, but please ask the questions in the proper way. You wish to ask a supplemental? You may.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To your Honourable Attorney General, AG, in light of those scare tactics that you have used, talking about the costs it will have on education and health.
Member for I'm sure all members know that all parliaments are governed by their own standing orders and their own cultural practices, so that the comment of the member of Naparima certainly hasn't escaped me. I am certain that I am not Speaker Bukau, and I'm certain that none of the members I see here resemble any member I've seen in the House of Commons. Member for Princestown, please rephrase your question so that it meets our standing orders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam, I will go back to my original question, again to the Honourable Attorney General, which has not been answered. And that is, why is there no urgency, or what position has the government adopted in terms of urgency, in terms of dealing with this matter as it relates to the ratification of these treaties?
Question asked and answered. You have another supplementary question?
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Member for Caroni East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In accordance with Standing Order 17 of the House of Representatives, I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the House for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely, the fact that the health and lives of thousands of people are seriously endangered because of the shortage of H1N1 swine flu vaccines. The matter is definite because it refers to the absence of sufficient supplies of the vaccines, as evidenced by the long lines and extensive waiting periods for patients seeking to access such immunization. The Minister of Health has acknowledged that the H1N1 outbreak constitutes a medical crisis. The matter is urgent because it impacts on the health of thousands of people who are susceptible to contracting H1N1 swine flu, which has already claimed the lives of several patients. The insufficient supply of vaccines has left many people vulnerable to premature death. The matter is of public importance because of the serious and alarming impact on a large cross-section of the national community, and because it compounds major issues in the public health sector, such as gross overcrowding at hospitals, wards, crippling shortages of doctors and nurses, and the absence of vital equipment and other resources.
Honourable Member, I am not satisfied that this matter qualifies under the standing order. I advise that the member pursues this matter under Standing Order 16.
Statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills. The Finance Variation of Appropriation Financial Year 2018 Bill 2019 in the name of the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Not ready yet. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 64-1B, I beg to move that the next stage of the Finance Variation of Appropriation, Financial Year 2018, Bill 2019, be taken later in the proceedings.
Honourable members, the question is that the next stage of the Finance Variation of Appropriation Financial Year 2018 Bill 2019 be taken later in the proceedings. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business, government business, motions.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives met on Monday, the 14th of January 2019, and agreed to a variation of the 2018 appropriation and to the write-off of losses approved for fiscal 2018. The Standing Finance Committee also noted... Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Madam Speaker. I'm terribly sorry. I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the 4th session 2018 to 2019, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2018. Thank you very much for that correction. And I repeat, Madam Speaker, the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives met on Monday, the 14th of January 2019,
and agreed to a variation of the 2018 appropriation and to the write-off of losses approved for fiscal 2018. The Standing Finance Committee also noted the transfer of funds between subheads under the same head of expenditure for fiscal years 2017 and 2018, respectively. Madam Speaker, I've done some research on variations of appropriation, supplementation of appropriation, because I have noticed that sometimes when we come to this House to debate, the opposition would like the public to believe that this is something new, that this is not a routine matter, that this is extraordinary. And therefore, I have checked. I went all the way back to the year 2000, Madam Speaker. And between the year 2000 and the year 2018, we had variations of appropriation or supplementations of appropriation or both in every year from 2000 to 2018, with the exception of the years 2009 to 2010 under a previous P&M administration. So that the matter that we are about today is nothing out of the ordinary. And it is required to close the accounts for fiscal year 2018. And Madam Speaker, the law provides that the accounts, this matter must be dealt with by the end of the 4th month after the beginning of the fiscal year, and that means in this case by the 31st of January 2019. The variation of appropriation of resources in the sum of $586,161,666 is necessary on the basis of the following. Firstly, the provision of additional funds in the sum of $517 million to bring to account debit advices for the period December 17, 2017 to September 2018 in order to meet the payment of interest on overdraft with the central bank. And secondly, the realignment of provisions in the sum of $69,161,666 in the 2018 fiscal accounts in accordance with the new assignment of responsibility for TT Connect service centers from the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications to the newly created Ministry of Communications that was effected by Gazette number 108, volume 56 in October 2017. And the assignment of responsibility for communications from the Ministry of Public Administration to the Ministry of Communications that was effected by Gazette number 77 in June 2018. The Standing Finance Committee also noted the transfer of funds between subheads under the same head of expenditure in a sum of $1,457,501,437 and $1,183,532,006 for fiscal 2017 and 2018, respectively. The total increase in the heads of expenditure being proposed is $586,161,666. The total decrease is an equivalent amount of $586,161,666. This produces a nil effect. And this is why this bill is entitled a variation of appropriation bill. It is not a supplementation of appropriation. In other words, it does not increase the national budget for 2018. The approval for this reallocation of funds is being sought by way of the bill that was just introduced, the Finance Variation of Appropriation, Financial Year 2018, Bill 2019. The details of the changes were circulated to all members of the Standing Finance Committee and discussed at its meeting on Monday, the 14th of January. It is anticipated, Madam Speaker, that during the course of this debate, that The proposals, some of the proposals contained within the bill with respect to the increases and decreases in the heads of expenditure will be addressed by my colleagues on this side. I will address several of them. Firstly, I would like to deal with the head of expenditure, for which the reduction in the sum of $517 million is proposed, the various heads. Following a final review of the 2018 accounts, savings were identified under the following heads of expenditure: Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and Ministry of Works and Transport. The reasons for the savings above these heads of expenditure are as follows. $100 million was not spent or was saved in the Ministry of National Security in the last fiscal year under the item rent or lease of vehicles and equipment. The reason for this saving was that the contract for the provision of CCTV coverage had expired in 2017, and the ministry was in the process of addressing a new contract for the provision of CCTV cameras. Therefore, payments were being made on a month-to-month or interim basis, which resulted in a saving of $100 million. Ministry of Health, $211 million. And I must compliment the Minister of Health. Please accept my congratulations. When I looked at what the Minister of Health had done in the last fiscal, this should be emulated by his predecessors, such as Barataria Sawan. The Minister of Health was able to rationalize the formulary list, that is the list of prescribed drugs in public hospitals, and reduce the number of prescribed drugs from 730 to 580, including CDAP drugs. This saved us $119 million in 2018. It is clear there were drugs on the list that were irrelevant, we didn't need them, that spending money on them was putting money into the pockets of persons who should not get this kind of public expenditure. So again, I want to congratulate the Minister of Health. The Minister also, through an arrangement with the Pan American Health Organization, was able to reduce the cost of purchasing and distributing. The additional cost from distribution channels was eliminated from the supply chain. So the middlemen that existed under the previous administration, yes, you, through you, Madam Speaker, thereby were eliminated, thereby reducing the final cost of drugs in our public health care system. Second area where the minister was able to achieve savings because of improvement in efficiency, medical treatment of nationals. There was a saving, $20 million. And that is because a higher number of patients were treated within the public health care institutions during the year. And in addition, there was better verification and reconciliation of claims for payment for treatment of nationals in the private sector. So again, as the minister said, he said that was a racket, not my words, his words. So that the minister was able to save $20 million by treating more people in the public health care system and preventing overcharging and leakage of money into the... Another saving. In the Regional Health Authority, there was a saving of $26 million arising from the recruitment of doctors from Cuba and claims from legal matters which were being addressed. So that there was a saving of $26 million. Yes, doing more with less, as the Honorable Prime Minister said. Yes, doing more with less. The Ministry of Health also undertook a review of the procurement processes for all the regional health authorities with a view to eliminating cost inefficiencies in the acquisition of goods and supplies in the health sector. The use of overtime was also more efficiently managed. There was also a saving of $7 million in the waiting list for surgery. There was an increase of surgical procedures undertaken within the public healthcare system. Again, better utilization of the public healthcare system. Specific procedures were increased: cardiac surgery at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, and also cataract surgeries performed by Cuban doctors at the San Fernando and Port of Spain General Hospitals and Mount Hope, all leading to a saving of $7 million. Yes, more surgeries, less cost. So that is why I'm congratulating the Minister of Health. There was a saving also in the hospital refurbishment program of some $15 million. Under health services support, $10 million was saved, were not spent because the arrangements were not completed for a particular project. Yes. With respect to the Ministry of Public Utilities, $62 million was saved in the Ministry of Public Utilities by rationalizing the engagement of contractor labor in WASA, in addition to more efficient use of in-house. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia is carrying on a monologue with her colleagues. I beg your protection. Stop it.
So the size of the chamber, I ask everybody to please observe Standing Order 53 in terms of volumes, and also, I think while I'm speaking, I'm still hearing a member speaking. A member for Princestown, you must realize you have a very unique voice. Okay? So, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, and while you were speaking, Cuba South was carrying on a loud discourse down there. So yes, Madam Speaker, $62 million was saved by the Ministry of Public Utilities by rationalizing contractor labor, and also improving the efficiency of in-house labor, as well as more efficient processes in the procurement of goods and services by the Water and Sewerage Authority during the fiscal year. That saves $62 million in recurrent expenditure. With respect to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, the government is currently reconciling the fuel subsidy payments to Petrotrin, the former Petrotrin for petroleum products. But what I can say, Madam Speaker, is that the government has entered into an arrangement to assist Petrotrin and has made the necessary arrangements, has put the necessary arrangements in place to allow for payment to Petrotrin of some $1.2 billion in outstanding fuel subsidies. That was done towards the end of last year. That is just an aside, Madam Speaker. With respect to the Ministry of Works and Transport, there was a saving of $44 million due to rationalization of the ferry services. With respect to the PTSC, the Public Transport Service Corporation acquired 35 new buses in 2018 and was able to reduce costs associated with procurement of spare parts and other maintenance services because of the acquisition of these new buses. The maintenance cost and so on was reduced significantly. Madam Speaker, just let me clarify an issue which surprised me when it was raised in the committee. The central bank, the profits from the central bank, Madam Speaker, are paid to the government on an annual basis. And in 2018, Madam Speaker, the government was able to, this is actually not in this fiscal, but I want to give some indication of what has happened with respect to the payment of overdraft interest over the years. Because it was an issue, there was a query about it as to what is this for, what is the interest rate, and I might say, Madam Speaker, it's a matter of public record that the interest charged by the central bank is what is called the repo rate, which changes from time to time. The repo rate changed from 4.75% to 5% around the middle of last year. Prior to that, it was at 4.5%, then went to 4.75%, and the repo rate is now 5%. And in the latest economic report from the central bank, they have decided to maintain the repo rate at 5%. So that is the rate, the interest rate that is charged to the government on its overdraft. And that is a matter of public knowledge. It's in the public domain. It has been stated ad nauseum in this place. So I was a bit surprised at the question. And that is the same interest rate paid by the former administration from 2012 to 2015, when for the first time, Madam Speaker, the overdraft went from credit to debit. Because in 2010, there was $6 billion in credit in the government's account. And by 2012, that had gone to zero and started to go into debit. And that is when the concept of overdraft interest really began to kick in. And that was paid by the previous administration at the repo rate, which is the arrangement that has been in place in this country for so many years. It's not fun. But to give some idea of the overdraft interest paid, in 2016, the government paid $705 million. In 2017, $946 million. In 2018, $973 million. And the profits received from the central bank during that period was $699 million, $713 million, and $1 billion, Madam Speaker. The central bank, between 2016 and 2018, has been improving its performance in terms of its earnings, in terms of the profit it makes. The central bank makes profit by investing our foreign reserves. So it invests our foreign reserves in short-term instruments overseas. And over the last couple of years, under this government, the contribution by the central bank to the national income has been increasing steadily. I just by way, as an aside, by way of information, the profit paid recently in December by the central bank for the period, for the 2018 fiscal, was $1.47 billion. So we've seen a situation where the central bank was paying a profit to the government under the UNC of $699 million, and they've now reached a point where the central bank is now paying this government, because of better investment of its foreign reserves, $1.47 billion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I heard the member for Naparipa bloat out something. You know, they don't like to hear good news. They don't like to hear that under them, the government was receiving $700 million in profits from the central bank. And under us, the government is receiving $1.5 billion in profits from the central bank. They will always find some excuse for the better performance of this administration in fiscal and monetary matters. I know it hurts them, Madam Speaker. It hurts them. And, Madam Speaker, to further explain it, Madam Speaker, we have defended the exchange rate in Trinidad and Tobago using our foreign reserves. And our foreign reserves are now less than they were in 2015. And since the income that the central bank earns is a combination of overdraft interest and reserves, one would think that with higher reserves under their tenure, you should have a higher income. But it was not so. It was half what it is now, Madam Speaker. But let me move on, Madam Speaker. I know they don't like to hear good news. With respect to the transfer of funds between subheads under the same head of expenditure, in Madam Speaker, Siparia and Naparima again.
Honorable members, please, as I say, remember the size of the chamber and therefore keep your volumes to an acceptable level, please. And if there's need be that the conversation is really important, members can always go out, have the exchanges, and return. Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In 1988, under the NER government, Cabinet delegated its authority to approve transfers between subheads under the same head of expenditure to the Minister of Finance, when it was agreed as follows. Requests for transfer of funds between separate subheads under the same head of expenditure should no longer be submitted for the Cabinet, but can be decided by the Minister of Finance on the advice of the Budget Division. So for the last 30 years, the Minister of Finance has had delegated authority to approve transfers between subheads under the same head of expenditure. So, following this 30-year tradition, because I come back to my original point, Madam Speaker, that members opposite like to, I will have to say, mislead the population into believing that what we are doing here is new and extraordinary. So following the 30-year tradition of the Minister of Finance approving transfers of heads, in fiscal 2018, the Minister of Finance approved the Madam Speaker, Naparima is looking straight at me and mumbling. In fiscal 2018, the Minister of Finance approved the transfer in the sum of 1.47457501 billion, Madam Speaker, $1,457,501,437 and $1,183,532,006 between subheads under the same head of expenditure for fiscal 2017 and 2018 respectively. The transfers, as has been the tradition for 30 years, were approved by the Minister of Finance based on notes from the respective ministers requesting the transfer. These transfers were requested to reflect changed circumstances and a consequential reordering of priorities in ministries and departments. They do not increase the total appropriation, the national budget for 2018, in any way. The information on the transfers approved by the Minister of Finance and explanation for these transfers were attached to the agenda, which was provided to the honorable members of this House at the Finance Committee meeting. Madam Speaker, the Budget Division has advised me that the fiscal data for 2018 has been substantially finalized and that the provisional outturn in central government fiscal operations for fiscal 2018 recorded a deficit of $5,351.6 million, or 3.43% of GDP, which is well within international norms. This was $910 million less than the final revised projections. The variance was mainly as a result of a lower than projected revenue of $368 million, which was complemented by a lower than projected expenditure of $1,278 million. Madam Speaker, I wish to say that the deficit of $5.351 billion, or $5,351.6 million, or 3.43% of GDP, which, as I wish to repeat, well within international norms, could even have been less. We chose, Madam Speaker, to only bank $3 billion from the NIF bond receipts in fiscal 2018 in order to give us early cash flow in fiscal 2019. You see, the business of government, Madam Speaker, is all about managing the flow of finances to the government. So we received $4 billion from NIF, and we chose to only bank $3 billion of that in fiscal 2018, and then bank the further $1 billion in October of 2018, the first month in the new fiscal year, in order to give us cash flow in that month. Some of these months, Madam Speaker, have indicated on several occasions previously, the government collects revenue at the end of each quarter. So you get corporation tax, and you get petroleum profits tax, you get supplementary petroleum tax, you get value-added tax, and so on a quarterly basis. So that months that are outside of a quarter, and I'll give an example, October and November, outside of the end of a quarter, the revenue flows are quite small compared to what comes in September, what comes in December, and what comes in March, and so on. So that being fully aware that October is a lean month, it is after the end of a quarter, what we chose to do was to bank 1 billion of the 4 billion in fiscal 2019. But if we had chosen to bank it in fiscal 2018, our deficit would have gone down to just 2.7% of GDP, which would have been quite admirable performance, Madam Speaker. I wish to point out that while we in this country, having an oil and gas-based economy, have been able to keep our deficits, a deficit in 2018 in particular, at 3% of GDP, there are some countries, some OPEC countries, many of them, and you would have seen that in the recent report to the nation, who had fiscal deficits of 15% and 20% in the last couple of years, Madam Speaker. We are at 3%, 3.4%, and so on. So we are managing our finances well within international norms. Madam Speaker, the revised revenue for fiscal 2018 was 42.62 billion. And the actual, that was the revised revenue, whereas the actual amount collected was 42.25 billion, which was some $368 million lower than the revised projections. The negative variance was due mainly to lower receipts under taxes on goods and services of 141.9 million and non-tax revenue of 387. And that non-tax revenue of 387 refers back to the 1 billion in NIF receipts that we chose to put into fiscal 2019. If we had put it into fiscal 2018, the revenue would actually have been 43.25 billion. And as I indicated, the deficit would have dropped from 5 billion to 4 billion and from 3% to 2%. In the category of taxes on goods and services, the variance of 151 million was mainly attributed to decreased collections from the energy and non-energy sectors. In terms of expenditure, the revised expenditure for fiscal 2018 projected at the time of the presentation of the 2019 budget was 48.88 billion. The actual expenditure was 47.6 billion, which is 1.28 billion lower than the revised level. The major areas where expenditure was lower than projected were interest payments. Interest payments were less than projected by some $564 million. The primary cause was the lower than anticipated level of expenditure on domestic loans. So we are managing our debt very well as well, Madam Speaker, causing a lower than expected expenditure on interest payments in the sum of over $500 million. Current transfers were less than projected by $513 million. This was attributable mainly to the variance in transfers from the Infrastructure Development Fund, the CARICOM Development Fund, the Housing Construction Program, and so on, Madam Speaker. Transfers to statutory boards and similar bodies were less than projected by 215 million, since a number of non-cash transactions were not brought to account before the end of the fiscal year. Capital expenditure on the development program was $127 million lower than projected. The expenditure was lower under the consolidated fund by $135 million and higher under the infrastructure development fund by $7.8 million. In terms of the overdraft, I've already spoken about it, but I need to speak about it again. When we assumed office in September 2015, we found that the previous government had been utilizing the overdraft at the central bank close to its statutory limits. And by the way, I was also asked at committee, what is the overdraft? That again is in the public domain. In the same way as the interest rate, the repo rate is known, has been known for 30 years by all governments, including the last one. It's also known that we came to Parliament and amended the appropriate legislation to make the overdraft 20% of revenue. We had a long debate on this, Madam Speaker, and the person who asked the question participated in that debate to modify the overdraft limit to 20% of revenue. So I was a bit surprised at the question, because these things are known and in the public domain and have been debated by members opposite, including the ones asking the question. The adjustment program undertaken by this government to bring expenditure broadly in line with the new and lower revenue streams because of the collapse of oil prices has kept the overdraft in place, fluctuating with the differential flows from the energy and non-energy sectors. This fluctuating overdraft, it varies, as I indicated, incurs interest at the current repo rate of 5%. I just checked the latest statement I got on our overdraft, and we get it every day, and our overdraft is currently at 75% of its statutory limit. It was much higher than that. It was much higher than that. A couple months ago, it had reached 98% a couple months ago. So that we are, and when we came in, it was 99%. When we came into government, the previous government gifted us an overdraft that was at 99% with just 1% left to spend. That's what a gift handed to this government by the previous government. But we've been managing this overdraft very carefully, and we now have it today at 75%, down from the 90% ranges that it was in previously.
Minister, would you kindly give way?
No.
No, thank you.
No. You would have your time to speak.
No, I wanted to ask
Madam
you a
Speaker,
question.
under the statutory framework within... Madam Speaker, could you?
Minister of Finance, what I advise is maybe you can direct your attention this way and try not to be distracted by others. I'm sure they will settle down if you direct your attention this way. Please continue.
I will follow your advice, Madam Speaker. But as you said that, I'm hearing noise on the right. So I don't think they're going to settle down. But anyway, under the statutory framework within which the central bank operates, surpluses from that institution, after expenses, are required to be paid into the consolidated fund. These surpluses are being generated by revenue associated with the holding of foreign currency assets and significantly from local currency assets in the main overdraft facility. During the period 2015 to 2018, the interest paid by the government on the overdraft facility amounted to $3.7 billion. And notwithstanding its administrative costs, which include the cost of producing notes and coins, the central bank was still able to transfer to the government over the 2015 to 2018 period the sum of almost $4 billion, significantly higher than the overdraft interest. This transfer of profits from the central bank to the government contributes significantly to public expenditure for the welfare of citizens of this country. And Madam Speaker, in terms of how we spent money in 2018, because this debate is all about the closing of the accounts for the year 2018. And it is necessary for me in terms of revenue and expenditure, because this debate is about varying heads of expenditure and explaining the fiscal outturn for 2018. And I think it is necessary and incumbent on me, Madam Speaker, to educate honourable members opposite on where they can find information on the fiscal outturn and on income and expenditure, income from various heads, various sources, and expenditure, and on public debt and debt to GDP ratio, because it's what I have, and the overdraft, because I have noticed, Madam Speaker, in the public domain, especially coming from honourable members opposite, I've noticed that there appears to be either a misunderstanding, or I don't know what the problem is. They just don't seem to know how we earn money and how we spend money in Trinidad and Tobago. So one of the documents that is relevant to the fiscal outturn for 2018 and also for all years, and this is one of the budget documents that was laid recently, is the Appendix 20 of the Review of the Economy 2018, Madam Speaker. And on Appendix 20, which is on page 99 of the Review of the Economy 2018, because we are dealing with closing the accounts, looking at how we spent money in 2018, you will see in Appendix 20, central government fiscal operations, total revenue and grants, current revenue, capital revenue, total expenditure, current account balance, etc., deficit, financing requirements, etc. And in the second row, under current revenue, and current revenue is essentially tax revenue, you will see that the energy sector revenue in fiscal 2014 was $28 billion, and in fiscal 2016 was $8 billion. You will see that, Madam Speaker. In addition, for those who want to have a better understanding of the fiscal outturn and the deficit and income and expenditure, there's another budget document that is very important, which seems to escape honorable members opposite and their associates, and that is the estimates of revenue. And if you go to the estimates of revenue for 2018, Madam Speaker, you will see that Head 01, taxes on incomes and profits, from the oil companies, this is in the 2018 estimates, for the last fiscal year, was $2.1 billion, Madam Speaker, and that was up, and that is Head 01, estimates of revenue 2018, that is $2.1 billion in fiscal 2018, and that is up from $1 billion in fiscal 2016. And just by way of comparison to show how well we are managing the economy, Madam Speaker, in fiscal 2014, when you go to the same Head 01, taxes on incomes and profits, you see that the revenue from oil companies in 2014 was $17 billion. So that we have managed to go through the whole of 2018, managing the country with a difference in terms of the receipts in taxes on incomes and profits between 2014 and 2018, which is the year under consideration, from $17 billion to $2. So that we have managed this country without $15 billion in tax revenue from the oil sector. We still managed to do that, Madam Speaker. And these things need to be told. And what members opposite love to do is to confuse people by quoting the wrong figures. Yes. Because I have just quoted, Madam Speaker, the comparison between the fiscal outturn in terms of taxes from oil companies in 2018, and given a comparison going back to 2016 and 2014, it was $1 billion in 2016, $2 billion in 2018, $17 billion in 2014 under the other administration. They like to confuse people.
Income.
Yeah, tax revenue.
From oil companies.
Oil companies.
What about energy companies?
And Madam Speaker, I am speaking to you. I'm hearing a noise over there, but I'm glad for the noise. Because, Madam Speaker, if I go back to Appendix 20, which I referred to recently, what you see is that in fiscal 2014, total energy sector revenue, which is taxes on oil companies, royalties, petroleum impost, business levy, green fund, and a variety of other fees, taxes, and charges on companies in the energy sector, total energy revenue in fiscal 2014 was $28 billion. So if you want to compare apples and apples, if you're just looking at oil taxation, if you compare 2018 to 2014, we managed with $15 billion less in energy, in oil taxation revenue. If you want to look at total energy sector revenue, the difference is $20 billion, Madam Speaker. So we have been managing this country with a loss of $20 billion in energy sector revenue. But my members opposite like to confuse people. So the Prime Minister would have indicated that taxation from oil companies in 2014 was 17, and taxation from oil companies in 2016 was 1, showing a drop of 16. They and their friends gone to total energy sector revenue and say, no, it's not 1, it's 8 billion, completely avoiding the fact that if you're comparing apples and apples, it dropped from $28 billion in fiscal 2014 to $8 billion in fiscal 2016. Total revenue, a drop of $20 billion. And also trying to pretend that the Prime Minister's statements were inaccurate, Madam Speaker. It is necessary to put these facts into the public domain. The other thing that is necessary to put into the public domain, Madam Speaker, I made the point that the expenditure on interest payments on debt was over $500 million lower in 2018 than projected. And that is because of the very prudent management of the Ministry of Finance in fiscal 2018. But you hear all sorts of talk about the way we are managing the economy, and we are talking here about the outturn in 2018 in terms of the deficit and so on, Madam Speaker, and the debt and so on, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you hear all sorts of old talk from their friends opposite that we are drowning in debt. But Madam Speaker, if you really look at the public debt and what happened to the public debt, you would see that between 2014 and 2015, Madam Speaker, that is the election year, the public debt shot up from $100 billion to almost $120 billion, Madam Speaker, just in that election year alone. And it took our debt to GDP ratio from 40% almost up to 60%, Madam Speaker. And we have managed to maintain a debt to GDP ratio since 2016 of between 60 and 62%, Madam Speaker. So that under the previous administration, Madam Speaker, if it was them, and if 2018 was a year of the UNC, we could see the public debt probably going up to $150 billion and debt to GDP going to 100%, because that is the kind of increases that were manifesting themselves under the administration that we have succeeded, Madam Speaker. So that I wish to summarize by saying that the deficit in 2018 is approximately $1 billion less than anticipated, and that is because of our prudent management. I wish to make it very clear that we are controlling the public debt and we are managing debt, and we've kept it stable at 60 to 62% of GDP over the last 3 years. I wish to congratulate again the Minister of Health for the very good work he's doing in the Ministry of Health, creating efficiencies and savings. And I beg to move, Madam Speaker, I beg that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the, just let me get the proper, yes, I beg to move, Madam Speaker, that we adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee. Thank you.
Honourable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the 4th session, 2018-2019, 11th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the variation of appropriation for fiscal year 2018. Member for Oropuch East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute on the matter before us. As announced and discussed previously by the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, we are here today to debate the report of the Standing Finance Committee on a matter involving variation between and among several ministries of government, and with the intention of closing the the record and the report on the fiscal 2018 year, balancing the budget, so to speak, after the fact, so that the Parliament would have approved whatever movement of finances and so on were done by the Ministry of Finance and or in collaboration with ministers of government. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance today was unusually laboring himself to present some type of face for the government today, to portray the government in some positive light today, and to use his words as a government that has managed the economy well, as a government that has delivered, as a government that is responsible, prudent management. Madam Speaker, this comes at the end of a week when all the egg was on the face of the government. And when a key game changer, as announced by the Minister of Finance in his budget, collapsed on him and his government. So, at the end of an embarrassing week, the Minister of Finance now portrays the government as being able to do more with less. He then praised himself and his colleague, the Minister from St. Joseph, on doing a wonderful job. But, Madam Speaker, we were at the Finance Committee, and I will quote extensively from the report in a few minutes. But what I will say in my introduction, Madam Speaker, is that what comes across clearly is a continuing pattern of ineptitude, incompetence, inefficiency, chaos and confusion by a motley crew that don't have a clue as to how to manage the affairs of this country. Madam Speaker, the Minister, and it's a motley crew without motley. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance told us today that we must praise the Minister of Health, because I want to quote that, I am very much interested. Madam Speaker, my constituents are all up in arms. They are angry. They are angry, irate, because we are told at the Debe Health Center, and I want to put on record my great respect for the staff at the Debe Health Center, very accommodating and kind staff, the healthcare workers and so on. But in praising the Minister of Health today on his good job, I want to repeat, Madam Speaker, that today, while the Minister gets his praise for 2018,
Madam Speaker,
and I'm on the 2018 figures and comments made by the Minister.
About 2018, 48-1, 48-1.
Why are you embarrassing us?
Member for St. Joseph, I overrule the way I understand. He's saying today you are praised by the Minister of Finance, and he's going on to he's going on to say something else. He's not saying about you were praised about what you did today. He said today you were praised.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You explained that better than I could. I'm commenting on the Minister of Finance today in the debate praised the Minister for his good work in 2018. Whatever that good work is, and I want to come back to the good work. But today, to connect to the Minister of Finance, my constituents cannot get the swine flu shot at all. We cannot get it. So, in praising him,
Member for Urubuch, I think you just slipped into a little crevice there, okay? Remember, we're dealing with the 2018. All right? So be guided.
My introduction for giving me so much latitude. The Minister received praise for his management of the systems in 2018. So I want to go back to 2018. I don't want to talk about this thing today. In 2018, I heard complaints. Not today. I heard complaints in 2018 that the health centers and the hospitals could not get medication, could not get drugs. They did not have beds in 2018. They did not have beds. And today we must hear the Minister of Finance praising the Minister of Health for his good work in 2018. And what is this good work? You see, this good work they're claiming is that He saved money here and saved money there. But in 2018, people could not get beds in the hospital. They could not get medication. They could not get MRI. They could not get CT scans. They could not get these facilities. But you praise yourself. In 2018, you're saying the hospital projects could not get off the ground. So you did a good job in 2018. They are calling their inefficiency, incompetence, and ineptitude savings. This is the only government that refers to its incompetence as competence. And I focus on health for that reason, because we have had complaints, Madam Speaker. I've had calls to write and to call directors of boards and managers in the hospital in 2018 about the poor service. I still do it, but I don't want to refer to what I do now. I want to refer to what I did last year, Madam Speaker, because I forgot what I did today. Last year, when we ran out of medication, it was a crisis. When you have your constituents calling upon you because 4 days they sit down on a bench in the San Fernando hospital, cannot get a bed. In 2018, regrettably, persons have lost their life at that point. And today, I'm hearing that the Minister of Health did good because he squeezed some money here, squeezed some money there, and returned it to the Minister of Finance to spend. So no money has been saved here. There's no saving of money here in case the country, I don't know who could be listening, but in case somebody was listening to the Minister of Finance, no money has been saved. What they have done is taken away money from ministries. And in the report of the Finance Committee, the Minister of Finance alerted us to that. I think it was Carney East who drew some statement from him. He told us in the Finance Committee, he said, look here, I have to pay an overdraft of more money than I expected. It was $900 million in interest. Interest on an overdraft. Interest is $900 million. I budgeted $400 million. I couldn't find $500 million. I need $500 million. So he goes in every ministry with a torchlight and look to see where he can get $500 million from. And they rake and scrape, not to save, but to pay the interest on the overdraft from the central bank. And I hear today, good financial management in 2018. Madam Speaker, in 2018, we have it on Hansard, it's part of the questions here. The Andean Development Bank, they took in 1 year, in that fiscal year, $625 million. They borrowed $12 million per day. US. 4.3. They gone into the HFS, the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Twice. They went into NGC in fiscal 2018. They went into NGC, into the Heritage Stabilization Fund, overdraft at the central bank, where interest is $900 million. When they got caught now with their pants down, that's an ugly analogy. When they got caught, Madam Speaker, when they got caught, they came to their ministries and said, look, we need 500 more. Only bring it out, bring it out. And then they come to it, they say, we save, we manage the country with less resources. Madam Speaker, you know what that reminds me of? You're running a house and you borrow money from the neighbor to eat. And when you finish eat, you say, nice, I'm managing this household well. I'm managing well, I'm making ends meet. I have food on the table, but all the money owed to the neighbor next door. That is the logic what they're doing here. Yes. The minister made another statement, and in my introduction I'll make reference to it, Madam Speaker. Made another statement that they were able, because of racket, that's a word that he used earlier, they were able to save so much money. The Prime Minister also repeats that in his 2-night or 3-night, whatever it was. The Prime Minister repeats that the former administration had projects and we were able to save. The Minister of Finance said that today. In 2018, fiscal year I'm dealing with, that was said, and that was part of how they're factoring their budgetary considerations in 2018. What they have done, Madam Speaker, they reduced the size of everything and said they save money.
Cutting out UNC racket. That's what we say.
Worse.
So, continue.
Correct that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have taken note of this tendency by colleagues opposite. this is a parliament. This is a parliament where you talk, you have parliamentary banter and so on. Today, Madam Speaker, if somebody open a toffee here, they stand up and say they're being disturbed. Everything is a disturbance now. This is not a bishop's tea party, this is parliament. Madam Speaker, so they reduced the size of these projects in 2018. Point Fortin Hospital, Arima Hospital. If we planned for 250 beds, they say we're using 75 beds. They drop the price and they say, look, we're able to save millions of dollars from the partnership we're doing. The Brian Lara is a classic case. In 2018, they opened and they had a big opening and so on there. And we intended to do over the covering of the Brian Lara Stadium, do over all the facilities, change the seating. They did nothing. They reduced the price and said, look, we're able to save 100 million, 80 million. Madam Speaker,
standing order 48-1, none of those savings are under Ministry of Sport for Brian Lara Complex.
So, Member for Rapuchis, I understand that you're making some sort of, you're highlighting your point. But again, you know, please don't use that to expand the debate outside of what are the heads and the matters under consideration here. Okay?
Madam Speaker, therefore let me get to the CCTV cameras. I think the moment has arrived to zero in on the cameras, because that is a fundamental part of this business. We'll now zoom in on that. Madam Speaker, during our conversation in the Standing Finance Committee, the Minister of National Security, who is not here today, I missed it, but I don't think he sought leave from the chair, but he's not here today because we understand well that the member for Point Fortin has returned to the building for a few days and is acting there. Madam Speaker, I want to quote from the record of Parliament in the Standing Finance Committee because I want to comment, and I certainly don't want to. We raised this issue about $100 million that the Minister of National Security is saying that, again, maybe good management, prudent management, they did not finalize a contract for the CCTV camera. And because of that failure to conclude a contract, they saved $100 million, which then went to pay the interest on the overdraft at the central bank. So they quote-unquote save. And when confronted with this issue, Madam Speaker, CCTV cameras pose a fundamental pillar in our fight against crime and bringing relief to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, not only to detect where criminal activity took place, to detect crimes and so on, but to prevent. And they are a critical arm of the operations of the security sector. And I speak that way, Madam Speaker. I've had the opportunity to sit on the National Security Council as well, so we do have some information about that. But the minister from Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, when asked about this, the status of the CCTV cameras and so on, from which the 100 million is coming here, is moving in 2018, he said, thank you very much, Madam Chair. When we came in as an administration, we found that a contract had been entered into with TSTT that was not a contract that was favorable by any stretch of the imagination to the taxpayers. In fact, when we did the mathematics and we worked out the cost per camera, it was phenomenally more expensive than it should have been. So at the National Security Council, we took a decision. We gave instructions that before the contract expired, there should be a competitive RFP process undertaken for the continuation and upgrade. Unfortunately, he dropped his voice there. Unfortunately, that was not done. And what we have done is we took steps to have the contract terminated. Now, how we could say this, I don't know, but he said, terminated, put on a month-to-month basis. Now, I don't know how you could terminate the contract, put on a month-to-month basis. And we went out with the RFP that is currently being evaluated. This minister was saying this, Madam Speaker, a few days ago, this January 2019. Currently being evaluated to award a contract for the improvement of the system and so on. Monday he was saying this, 14th of January 2019. The costing that had been entered into by the previous government, previously, was working out in some instances to be between $14,000 to $11,000 a camera per month. And then the members opposite him gone, ooh, ah, right? Whereas there was another provider, Columbus Communications, that was doing a certain sector of cameras for $3,000 per month. His colleagues again go on ooh and ah. So just on that comparison alone, the Security Council decided not to renew the contract, and we ended up with a credit, meaning, well, they ended up with money because they were budgeted for money. Madam Speaker, when member for Naparima asked a question with the arrangement, and do you have procedures and systems in place, the minister replied, we were aware of this when we came into office, because of course when we came into the office, the CCTV camera was up and working. It is when the time came for renewal, we looked at it and did an assessment. Minister didn't say who did an assessment, huh? But they did an assessment and found out that they were paying more than they should have. So we actually saved a few $100 million on the decision not to continue with this arrangement. He continued, and I'm skipping the questions from my colleagues here, reading their questions, but to get to the answers of the minister. Let me say the CCTV camera system is operational and is currently in use and being utilized and fully functional. There are percentage of cameras that are always down. You see, he looked at that as 15% of the cameras. We went out for procurement. There were certain companies, I think about 8 of them, selected to put in competitive tenders. They are currently being evaluated, and improvement and enhancements and so on will take place. During this interaction at the Standing Finance Committee, time and time again, colleagues, and this I asked the minister, Minister, are you doing a proper comparison? Could you compare the TSTT service and equipment with what a private supplier is telling you is $3,000 a month? The minister actually didn't want to hear about that at all. He said we were saving money. And he said, and I quote, I mean, there was an increasing cost to the camera, not the coverage, because the cost per camera agreed to under the UNC regime, cost per camera ranged from $14,000 to $11,000. And a similar service, $3,000 per camera by a private provider. Madam Speaker, in just 30 seconds, I'll tell you, this sounds familiar to me. When we were in office and we took steps for the CPEP company to do contract services for the Ministry of Works under the member for Tabakit, a lot of people protest. They said the CPEP was charging too much money, but the CPEP was a state enterprise. They wanted to go to a private provider. And they wanted to go to a private provider because a private provider is private. It's not state. You may not have the checks and balances there as you do with a state enterprise. You do not have the accountability. So when I looked at this, I said, why do you want to go to a private company when the state enterprise, at least partially or majority owned by the state, TSTT, can provide you with the service? And the government presumably makes the money. You're really moving money from left hand to right hand because it's the state. But they're interested in providing private providers. Madam Speaker, when I did some research on this matter over the last few days, Madam Speaker, I was concerned. I found out, Madam Speaker, that there are some fundamental errors in the minister's account of this matter. Just for the record, I want to state that it was under the Patrick Manning administration where at least 6 of them in the front bench here were there. They were in the cabinet at that time, at least about 6. Under Mr. Manning's administration, that cabinet agreed to 389 cameras at $10,000 plus VAT from TSTT. $10,000, Madam Speaker, under the Manning administration, not the partnership administration. Under the partnership administration, we increased the amount of cameras by 500. 500 cameras more the partnership put. But more than that, Madam Speaker, we had also initiated the establishment of regional centers, 4 regional centers under the partnership administration to receive the feed, what is called the feed, view the cameras and do additional work. 4 regional centers. We then ordered another 800 cameras and the price was $12,000 at that time, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you understand the issue immediately. That this camera business, CCTV, has started under the Manning administration at $10,000, more or less. It went up to 12 when we took 500 plus 800 more cameras onto the system and created regional centers. So there you have more services per camera when you have regional centers as opposed to when you have one central area. More infrastructure went into it. Madam Speaker, the minister tried to make this talk about, we don't have the pricing, and somehow that sounds like corruption. That's what the minister was saying, essentially. That was some deal that we made, and corruption and so on. And this is a narrative that the government has. This is their narrative. I heard the most bewildering statement the other day. The Prime Minister, I think, buffing up some group one way or another, talking about the last administration was the most corrupt in the Commonwealth. Madam Speaker, those are things you say after 6 stag in a rum shop. That is not what you don't say those things on the record formally and so on, You bring evidence, you take it to the Integrity Commission, the police and so on, and you say, look, we believe something was wrong, and you take up the matter. That is rum shop talk that they're engaged in. And with the TSTT and the CCTV camera, this matter before us now, I put it to you that the member for Portisville North and St. Anne's West really spoke as if he imbibed a few before coming to the House. And I know him, he's not a man to do that. He's not someone to do that, Madam Speaker. Not before coming to the House. Madam Speaker, I want to put on the record as well that TSTT never sold cameras. They sold a video surveillance system along the lines of what is called a safe city concept. So they were never selling cameras. So talk about the price of cameras. That was done by an Israeli company. The cost expressed per camera is made up, for the record, because the minister is talking about his high cost. The cost per camera is made up of dark fiber, the cost of camera, software, storage, integration with the system, and maintenance. So the government, when you take that package, all you do is you pay the fee every month. You have absolutely nothing to worry about. And that was what we did at that time. But Madam Speaker, more importantly, $100 million is made available. And Madam Speaker, to really endorse my point, there was also a newspaper article the day after, I believe it was, where a headline, Young, referring to the minister, of course, PP paid TSTT almost 4 times the amount for CCTV camera. That was what they were putting in the public domain. And there's a newspaper account of what transpired at the Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, when we look at this matter of that CCTV camera that allowed the $100 million in 2018 that we are debating today, Madam Speaker, I just want to put on the record and raise certain questions, well, for the member for Point Fortin in the absence of Portisville North. Madam Speaker, we are informed, and this happened in fiscal 2018, because my date is September, early September, which is in the fiscal. The RFP process for re-engineering and expansion of the National Security CCTV network was scheduled to close on September 7, 2018 at 1:30 p.m. That is the contract that they were talking about. This closing date and time were in fact a revision of an earlier date, and the information regarding this extension was formally communicated via a letter to all bidders signed by the chairman of the Special Tenders Committee on August 21, 2018. I am within my fiscal. Notwithstanding the many concerns, bidders registered in writing with respect to various aspects of the RFP. All parties except one, a company known as Integrated Microwave Technology Limited, traded as Vislink, prepared, all parties except this company, prepared and submitted its bid via both technical and financial packages on or before September 7th last year. The deadline. Upon submission, no tender register was available for signature, as had been indicated by Section 1, Clause 510 of the RFP. They did not have a register to put when you bring your bid. It is important to note the chronology of events which occurred subsequent to September 7th. At around 1:45 p.m. on September 7th, participants were informed via email, and this is a $100 million contract. Fake oil, the same amount. Were informed via email that the General SSA Procurement Department email address through which RFP queries were channeled, they were informed via that address that a further extension of time was approved for the submission of proposals with a new deadline of September 21st, 2018. Still within the fiscal. It is to be noted that this email was sent 18 minutes after the closing time of the tender. At 2:04 p.m. and 2:33 p.m. respectively, Cable and Wireless Communications and Digicel, Cable and Wireless Communications and Digicel registered their concerns via email to the SSA Procurement Department regarding the receipt of a notice of deadline extension after the closing time of the tender. Digicel in particular noted that the technical submissions of Digicel and other bidders who had submitted way in advance of the deadline had been opened. Digicel, let me repeat that. Digicel in particular noted that the technical submissions of themselves, Digicel, and other bidders who had submitted same in advance of the deadline had been opened. Almost contemporaneously with Digicel's email, the SSA Procurement Department sent an email to bidders at 2:32 p.m. indicating, and I quote, the opening process was handled by the ministry. So the Procurement Department is saying it was handled by the ministry and the Ministry of National Security. Someone who likes to stand up and talk about the last administration. So it was opened by the ministry, and the extension of the deadline for submission of proposals was not communicated, presumably to ministry officials, in a timely manner, and as such, regrettably, the extension would have to be withdrawn. So you understand what's happening now? Close, extend, withdraw, and the ministry has a hand in it, not the procurement department or the special tenders committee. Madam Speaker, this story continues. Between 2:30 p.m. and 2:45 p.m., all bidders received a call from an official in the Ministry of National Security who advised that an extension of the deadline had been granted by the director of the SSA, and that they should therefore return to collect their bid packages. Some declined this invitation and requested written official correspondence indicating the position as to the closing of the RFP. It is to be noted that in the language of one Mr. Lizama's letter, it mirrors that of the email sent by the SSA Procurement Department at 2:32 p.m., which indicated that the extension would have been withdrawn. Madam Speaker, at 3:01 p.m., all bidders received an email from one Christy Edwards, Procurement Officer, Ministry of National Security, which stated that on the recommendation of the Director, Strategic Services Agency, the Chairman Special Tenders Committee has agreed to extend the date for the close of the tender from 7 September 2018 to 21st September 2018. At 1:30, I'll come to you, let me just finish it. At 1:30 p.m. And Mr. AG, I will not forget you. On Monday, September 10, 2018, the SSA Procurement Department sent an email to bidders copying the email of Ms. Edwards and asking bidders to note its content. So we are explaining now how they got this $100 million to move to pay the interest on the overdraft. This is it. Madam Speaker, this represents a total contradiction of communications to bidders. This is what the member for Port of Spain North and St. Anne's West like to refer to as bid rigging. A total contradiction of communications to bidders is evidence.
No,
Madam,
he said he refers to that.
Have some comments.
48-6. And Madam Speaker, if I may just ask as well, what is the source, Madam Speaker, what is the document the member is reading from? In that.
You get out.
Come to you.
Honorable members, any member is entitled to stand up and raise a point of order on the standing orders. And when that is done, all members who are standing would sit. All members will sit in silence and allow the chair, member for Superior, and would allow the chair to rule, and then we proceed. I would also like to caution members, in finding within all of us some degree of tolerance. Member for San Fernando West, I overrule you on Standing Order 48-6. Please continue.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, is that the standing order? It is. But is there a standing order? Would you like me to give way? What is the standing order? The standing order is applied. Madam Speaker, let me proceed. This represents a total.
Members, we just went through this. If you wish to raise a standing order, Honorable Attorney General, please identify the standing order.
Yes, Madam Speaker. The standing order provided under the Constitution, which is that when there is silence in our standing orders, we adopt the House of Commons, and I'm entitled to raise that. And I'm simply asking, so that I may exercise the right of privilege, that the member identify the source of information that the member is reading liberally from. That springs to our general privileges, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm entitled to raise my point. I am asking for the member's source of information, the right of privilege which I have to exercise in respect of something that the member is saying springs from that. Because the member is raising content from a printed text, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to know the source of that information so that I may exercise privilege, Madam Speaker.
Members, I cannot hear if everybody is going to speak at the same time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member is quoting from a document in his hand and has done so liberally during the course of his presentation, purporting to put facts which he is now owning. In those circumstances, I am entitled, if I choose and if I qualify, to raise a motion of privilege against the motion, as has been demonstrated in this House previously. In those circumstances, I am asking for the member to identify the source of the information and whether the member is taking ownership of that which he is putting onto the record. Because, Madam Speaker, the member has said that this is tantamount to bid rigging, and that is a serious matter of privilege concerning the members of this House.
Madam Speaker, there's abuse.
Okay, so Attorney General, I am of the view unless a member is quoting Hansard, he's not required to reveal his source. I also rule that anything a member says here, I take it that the member takes ownership for it. All right? So that whether or not the member is saying something, he has taken ownership for it. And that doesn't prejudice you. You will deal with your point as you see necessary. Continue work.
Madam Speaker, I'm assured of getting back those 4 minutes in injury time as we proceed.
An honourable member for Urupuch East, your time, your original speaking time is now spent. You are entitled to 15 more minutes to complete your submission, and it starts from now.
Thank you, ma'am. That's okay, AG? Okay. Madam Speaker, no, I thought you were going to give me 15 more. Madam Speaker, the train of events which I raised here speak to a contradiction in communications to bidders. Madam Speaker, I'm not raising anybody here in the House. This is now a strategy.
So 4410 is respect to it's a debate, and therefore one should not rely on reading a speech. All right? So
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I never thought...
Which I think you're seasoned enough.
Yes.
And therefore,
sure.
As you know, it's a debate.
Madam Speaker, I never thought the day would come when somebody opposite would read a standing order with me about reading a speech. But it come to that because it's a desperate moment, you see. It's a desperate moment. So, Madam Speaker, I will browse my notes and speak. So the first issue is communications, and I hold my paper behind my back. Is communications to bidders. Now, that is akin to bid rigging, where you are miscommunicating and communicating to bidders after the closing time of a bid. Then, if you are opening documents, technical and financial documents of bidders, and then you are now going to reissue a bid, that, Madam Speaker, is tantamount to fraud and criminal conduct. Madam Speaker, the contract and attempts to contract on this matter, those attempts are now irreparably damaged. They are now damaged, and you cannot renew the process by extending deadlines. Madam Speaker, this matter in which one company did not submit on time, and the extension came as if to facilitate one company, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm now asking the question whether this company is an English London-based company providing CCTV camera services, software and other services. It is not, from our quick check, Madam Speaker, it is not a company registered in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are dealing with a foreign company. Madam Speaker, that has even more implications now. As members on this side indicated when we were talking about boat and so on, you have more implications that a foreign company could be involved in something shady in Trinidad and Tobago, and that has implications. And if it is that this company is English-based, I ask the government to investigate this matter fully and urgently. And in fact, Madam Speaker, as we speak, if it is the Minister of National Security is in London, he can investigate immediately because he's in London. He may be in London at this time on business, and he can investigate this matter because the company may be an English company based in London, and he may have some approach there. Madam Speaker, we call upon the government to cancel immediately and investigate this act of bid rigging, of fraud, of intermeddling.
I'm going to stop you there because it's either you're saying definitely it is or you're saying it appears. So I want you to be careful with what you're saying and own what you're saying now.
Madam Speaker, from the information available to me, it appears to be a serious criminal offense involving the provision of the CCTV camera. Madam Speaker, I do not believe these are simple missteps. I believe that this is a calculated initiative, calculated effort on the part of certain persons. Unlike before, I no blame in any member of the House, Madam Speaker. I before the Privilege Committee on 2 matters already. So I am not raising any issue about members here. Because, Madam Speaker, it's not a privilege to be at the Privilege Committee. Madam Speaker, I cast no aspersions on any member of this House here. But I cast aspersions clearly on that process that led to this $100 million. Because you see, Madam Speaker, if they had a clean process and you could quickly renew a contract for such a critical service, such a critical security service, you would not have the $100 million to help the Minister of Finance to pay the interest on the overdraft. Madam Speaker, there are also other matters in the, how much time? There are also other matters in the documents before us, and I will speak just briefly to a couple. Madam Speaker, as I said in the beginning, this matter before us has absolutely no business. It has absolutely no root in managing the economy or properly managing the economy. This is simply a way to take money from ministers and put towards paying the interest on an overdraft. And when in the Standing Finance Committee we discovered that there were ministries, for example, the Ministry of Public Utilities, which colleagues will talk on later, where you are saying that you took $64 million and moved it from public utilities. We asked the question for the record, we did before. Why could you not have taken that $64 million and spent it on water projects, small projects to facilitate water, to provide water to constituents and others, Madam Speaker? Why did you not take the money in local government or in, well, public utilities, works elsewhere, and use that money for the provision of goods and services? Madam Speaker, we have been there, we know it's done. When you check in your ministry, you are, the fiscal year ends September 30th. By July, June, you know, Madam Speaker, which minister and which projects will complete and which will not. So when you look at that and you analyze the PSIP or the Infrastructure Development Fund, you look at what is being spent and what is to be spent, you have a great idea of what will not happen. You then via that money within your ministry to provide goods and services for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Whether it's buying an MRI machine, buying important medication, drugs and so on for the hospitals, whether it's buying more swine flu for people last year in 2018. Vaccine, Madam Speaker, buying the vaccines to deal with the swine flu epidemic. Whether it's that you do in 2018 or not, there's a way of doing it, to use the money. The minister has the power to approve that if there's a recommendation from the ministry. And you do that every year, that is not new. But this time they could not do that because the Minister of Finance himself miscalculated, misunderstood, misconceived, planning his budget and didn't know he needed 900 million to pay interest on the overdraft at the central bank. And then comes today to talk about what a great government it is, what we managed. Prudent savings. And I want to repeat that, Madam Speaker, in closing. Not 1 cent of this money has been saved. Not 1 cent. So this government should not even use the word savings.
Transferred for spending.
This is transferred to spend, to pay interest. And look what you did. You took drugs away from the patients. You took box drain and water projects away from communities. In the case of the CCTV camera, it appears to be a completely corrupted, polluted process involving key departments in national security, key operatives. And then you find $100 million because you could not, because of corruption, you could not spend the money on a proper contract. Madam Speaker, that is what we have today. And Madam Speaker, I call on the government to review this matter. TSTT is providing a service. TSTT is providing an important service here, notwithstanding all the problems they face and so on, Madam Speaker. But I am very concerned when ministers of government can come in the parliament and seek to build a case for private sector providers of services. Because not me, Madam Speaker, not I, it's the minister who raised the name Columbus Communications to suggest that they were better at $3,000. But what are they providing for $3,000? What exactly are they providing? Is that just the camera? Madam Speaker, I'm now told that the technology has advanced, where cameras must be changed almost every 2 years. They now have technology where one disturbance in an environment lead to triggering systems throughout the infrastructure so that law enforcement responders can move quickly. And this is unmanned, this technology driven. Yes. So that cameras have to change. Is Columbus providing cameras? Are they providing the service? The fiber line? What are they doing? How much regional centers do you have operational? Because, Madam Speaker, in 2018, we read in the newspapers where you can't find cameras working here or there. I am told, Madam Speaker, in certain, what is called hotspot areas, every time TSTT put up camera, is vandalized. Every time they put up in hotspot area, is vandalized. So again, you have the cost escalating because every week, every month you have to replace cameras because they're being vandalized. But to blame that and say this is expensive, we need to go out and do another bid because you have, because something fishy is happening there. So that you understand what is happening. You have a contract in place, first entered by the Manning administration, continued by the administration of the leader from Siparia. But that couldn't satisfy them. It couldn't satisfy them. They want a private provider, and they have their bidding, and when the provider come in late, they extend. So this, Madam Speaker, speaks volumes. This speaks volumes of their commitment towards transparency and accountability. And the minister today raised issues of transparency and accountability. And it came at a time when 500 workers from TSTT had to go home, Madam Speaker. It came at that time, Madam Speaker. Today they spoke about transparency. The Prime Minister all over the place. I don't know if he's in a time warm, we had a show called Time Tunnel when I was growing up. Yes. I don't know if somebody threw him in a time tunnel and he's only living between 2010 and 2015. Yes. But he needs to return to reality, to come back here, Madam Speaker. Every time they talk now is 2010 to 2015, that's all. And that is why today citizens don't have water, they don't have drugs in the hospital, don't have the vaccine, they don't have roads. And to hear in the Finance Committee, I heard it as well, it was raised. We have the report. You're doing a good job. Ministers come here and say we get value for money. Their idea of value for money is nothing happening. Sending home people. So we save money on some road somewhere, but all the roads in the country collapse. All collapse. But we save money, and they did not save money. We made that point abundantly clear today. If that was some trick you are coming with, don't try that again. You did not save money. It was the borrowing at the central bank. It was the borrowing at the Andean Development Bank. It was a $25 billion free-for-all and borrowing that they have undertaken over the last 36 months or so. About $25 billion. They're living off borrowed money, because they cannot generate revenue of their own, and they have all this talk about diversification and so on, Madam Speaker. I mean, the Sandals project I always say Sandals could not have withdrawn because they were never inside. I don't know if you could withdraw if you're not inside, but you cannot get out if you were not in. Sandals was never in the first place. That was another cock and bull story. So, Madam Speaker. Yes.
So please, get back to what we're about.
Yes. Madam Speaker, I just want to refer to one other headline in the documents before us. I think it was another ministry that we had a concern with. Yes, Madam Speaker. We raised the issue. We understand very well, those on this side, of course, we understand very well the need to move money and shift money when you separate ministries, or even when you pull them together. When you pull ministries together, clearly you have to do some more work with rebudgeting, if that's a term, and getting all under one fund and so on. When you separate, you have the same challenge. Madam Speaker, our concern on this side, as was raised, was the funding of the Ministry of Communications. The funding of communications, the funding of that ministry, and to what purpose it is going to. In 2018, Madam Speaker, what we saw in 2018 in terms of government communications was obscene in 2018. It's probably more obscene today, but I'm not talking about today. Last year, 2018, it was obscene that they were using taxpayers' money, Madam Speaker, for clear political objectives, political meetings, political talks, and using state enterprises to carry political speeches, one in Marabella in fiscal 2018, in Marabella, carrying Prime Minister and ministers speaking in political meetings under the guise that they were talking government policy. And that is the money that they were using for that purpose, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, today, in a nutshell, we want to tell the Minister of Finance, not being the only Minister of Finance of this country history, I believe, not to be qualified in economics and finance, we want to tell the Minister of Finance that you cannot fool the people any longer. People judge your government by the quality of their lives. They don't judge your government by what you stand up and talk, by the quality. Do you feel safer? Do you feel secure? Do you have a job? They talk about efficient value for money when everybody gone home. Everybody gone home, people have no jobs, but they talk about value for money. That, Madam Speaker, is obscene. And this government is on their last days. They're on their last days. They are on their fourth and second to last year, and it is time they grow up and take responsibility. Thank you very much.
Okay, honorable members, it is now 4:27:47. It's now an appropriate time that we take suspension, and therefore we shall return at 5 p.m. This House is now suspended.